carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
We are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend, combat wounded Green Beret, Randy Nance, back home in North Texas. Below him, our in-house intelligence SME, aka S2. Apparently, bird watching is not a recommended hobby in Afghanistan, by the way. And directly below me, my good friend Jeff MD, former 26-year CIA case officer, author extraordinaire. And as y'all can see, he has broken out his CIA uniform for tonight. Well done. Good job, Jeff.
Yeah.
He tried to tell us it was just for Halloween, but we know better.
No.
So
Halloween's a totally different costume.
Well, fair enough. But speaking of interesting stuff, check this out. Let me get something up on screen here for y'all. That's pretty funny. So Randy just got back from hunting. 10-day hunting trip, right? And so he comes back from hunting, and he tells us all that he used somebody else's gun and he missed the biggest deer he's ever seen in his life. And so before we went live tonight, he found this picture on Google, I think, and sent it to me and tried to tell me this is the deer that he almost missed. But it sounds like a fish story to me, Randy. I mean,
that's really Randy in the background. He just trimmed his beard and dyed it brown, and then got some.
Right. Got a little bit of the wings in the back. No, that definitely is him. But the guy I went hunting with sent me the picture, and apparently this guy shot this buck 2 or 3 days ago.
Wow.
And I shot at him 2 weeks ago.
So it's not flat, but width-wise is as big as your typical bull moose is.
Yeah, that's
ginormous.
That's a once in a lifetime muley right there, and for sure,
that's a muley,
public land. Yeah, that's a mule deer right there, buddy.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why I described him as a once in a lifetime, and that he's so majestic, is what we said right after we missed.
I think he needs to be tested for steroids. I'm just saying.
That's too funny. So moving along from there, I got to thank everybody out there. When I ask y'all to go and sign up for survivaldispatch.news, because it gets us higher in the top 100. This is live right now on Substack. And Keith Graves, Christian Warrior Training, my good friend Keith, and I are number 2 and 3 on the top 100 rising right now. And when that happens, again, it's this self-licking ice cream cone deal, because when you're up higher, more people see you, more people start to follow you and whatnot. So I cannot thank y'all for helping us get way up there on the Substack top 100 rising. And just so y'all know, and I'll mention it a couple more times tonight, but if you go to survivaldispatch.news, the top story through until tomorrow night is, for the first time ever, we're running a 30% off deal on Guardian memberships, and it expires at midnight tomorrow night. And in a nutshell, when you become a Guardian, normally it's $7.99 a month. Right now, I think it's like $5.49 a month, or $74.99 a year, or $52.49 a year right now. But you unlock 4 different signal channels that we've got. You get SHTF alerts. You get $370 in e-magazines. You get direct access to our entire team and a whole bunch of other things. So I just want to remind everybody, this ends at midnight tomorrow night. And here's the thing, whether you sign up for free or paid, they both factor in to the top 100 rising list. So you can help us get really high. And think about it, for less than $5 a month, when you pay the $52.49, that's less than one coffee, at a place like, God forbid, Starbucks. but places that we don't go to. With that said, we're going to move on to the conflicted question, and then we're going to dive into the main topic tonight. S2, take it away.
Okay, here we go. Every night we come on here lately, I'm seeing new names out here. So for those of you who have not been with us before for the conflicted question, I'll explain how this works. I am going to read off a question from the conflicted game deck, and we are going to answer this question at the end of the show, and we want to see what your responses are in the chat. So this will give you something to think about while we're moving on through our subject matter. Here we go. Mason needed an inhaler in order to overcome a severe asthma attack. I don't know who Mason is. Okay. Gordon, we know who Gordon is. Everybody dies around Gordon. Gordon and other men drove out to find one. While scavenging for an inhaler at a store, he found someone who had the inhaler he needed, but the person wouldn't give it up. If you were Gordon, how far would you go to secure something you needed after being told no by its owner? This is an easy one.
Yeah, very easy. Absolutely. So actually, before we dive into the Command 11 sit rep, I do want to mention, I got to get everybody up on stage here. I do want to mention that Khalid is occupied tonight with the war that's going on between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Yes, he is safe. I can confirm that he's safe. He's on base in Pakistan. He will be back tomorrow night. So I know somebody for sure would ask about him. I mentioned, I can't remember his last name.
Wait. He let something as minor as a war keep him from doing the show?
Yeah, well.
Oh, what a wuss.
Well, that's why I put up my bird watching meme tonight.
There you go.
No kidding. It's like, man, I thought he was like a manly man, but apparently not. Tell him I said that, by the way. I don't want to be accused of sniping.
There you go. So last night I mentioned how our friends at Stay Brewed Coffee, they always send us coffee. They don't pay us anything. I don't even want any money from them. They're just a great family. The daughters always send us something like this. Craig's married. He's got 6 girls, and they're all at home. And he's got everything from coffee beans to ground coffee to, cups like this. I gave you all the wrong code last night. So I said SD15. It's not SD10. It's SD15. We'll get you 15% off of all of his products. So,
and for the record, 6 women in his house, he has estrogen poisoning.
I'm not even going to comment on that.
Yeah, he has been set adrift in the estrogen ocean.
There you go. All right, let's jump into the Command 11 sit rep here. It won't be super long. We're going to get into our main topic immediately after this, which is the latest episode, or the most current episode, I should say, of our long war series, which is post 9/11 2.0 complex coordinated terrorist attacks. We're going to be talking with regards to faith as foundation, spiritual resilience, faith institutions, churches, filling the role as being the pillars of morale, unity, hope in a destabilized America. So with that being said, here is the first one, and it's only 8 seconds long, but it's really, really relevant since we're only 2 days away from food riots and the food apocalypse. African Immigrant Services says that more than 90% of the families they help rely on food assistance.
Exploring all options, African Immigrant Family Services says that more than 90% of the families they help rely on food assistance.
So there was somebody, I'm trying to remember what country they were from. I think it might have been Afghanistan, but I could be wrong, that testified in front of somebody yesterday and said, well, if I don't get EBT, I don't get SNAP. I can't afford to stay in America. And I'm not trying to be a dick or anything like that, but okay, well, go home. Because what are you doing for us? But does this surprise anybody that the majority of Africans here, and if I had to guess, it's probably not Afrikaners, right? Or however you say it, the white
Afrikaners.
Afrikaners, that's it.
No. And to be honest, it's probably not even a clear majority of African immigrants. Because a lot of African immigrants, the ones who do it the legal way, they come here because they're educated and they can't use that education to further their lives in Africa because it's basically a shithole. So they come here. They have a degree. They've got a master's or something. They want to apply. So they come to the United States. Those people work their asses off and they do well. It's the ones that Biden let in for the last 4 years. Yeah. And it's from Africa. It's from Latin America. It's from all over the world. These are economic refugees is the polite way to put it, but they're here to sponge off the system. Yeah. And if you come here with no intention of working, get the hell out.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Does anybody want to add anything on to that before we jump on to the next one?
Yeah, obviously this has been a really hot button subject here for the last couple of weeks, but what a lot of people don't realize too is that everybody's been running around saying illegal aliens should not have access to these services. Well, here's the deal. They don't. The ones that have access to it are the ones that come here and they basically designate themselves as asylum seekers. So when they get that status, they actually are given access to those services. And that's the problem, is these people that are seeking asylum, the 90% of them are bullshit. But they're given access to they're given access to Medicaid, they're given access to SNAP, EBT, whatever you want. And that needs to stop as well, because that additionally puts a drain on the system, and it's another fraudulent way to game the system.
Well, actually, it's more like 99%, because to declare, if you're a real refugee, asylum seeker, means you're in danger in your home country. You're supposed to declare or ask for asylum in the first safe haven, which Correct. Is the first country you come to where you are not being persecuted. And if you are from, pick a country, Iran, okay, and you go through 7 European countries and then hop on a plane at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris and then land in America and declare asylum? No. You should have declared asylum at least in Paris, and then before that, wherever you were, before. That's bullshit. That is venue shopping. And it's like, no, if you're really in danger of your life or in fear of your life, the first place you go, if you're from Iran and you end up in Turkey, then you should be asking for asylum in Turkey.
Especially if you're Muslim.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Randy, I'm going to pull up a post from Sarah and then come to you first on this. So be careful using language like the reporting has been single sourced if you aren't a collector. And so she's speaking with regards to the 9/11 2.0 stuff. I know of a dozen entities providing and collecting intelligence on this homeland plot across 8 countries, including foreign governments. Don't claim things when you're unaware of the actual sourcing. AQAP released its first warning video about the homeland plot in English back in December 2023 publicly. No one wanted to take them seriously because the public was lied to that we defeated Al-Qaeda. Don't mistake hubris and our government's control of media narratives for a lack of reporting. Our government has 10 times more intelligence on this upcoming Al-Qaeda plot by bin Laden's sons than it did in the lead up to 9/11 1.0. So I'll quickly say that, we collaborate with Sarah. Obviously, we work on a daily basis with Khalid, who has boots on the ground in Afghanistan and has penetrated 80 out of approximately 120 terrorist camps. We've worked with Jane Doe. We have JTTF liaisons who feed us information that we have to be very careful with because it's identifiable. So we may not have Sarah's array of intel sources, but to claim that this has been a single source story is just wildly incorrect. And Sarah has said multiple times, and I want you to speak to this, Randy, that if you, in fact, only have one source, you don't have a story, you don't have intelligence. You've just got, a tidbit of something to research. Thoughts on this, Randy, because it's not getting the coverage that it deserves. It's going to cost American lives. And you have people like Sebastian Gorka canceling meetings between Sarah and Joe Kent, the head of the NCTC, National Counterterrorism Center. Then she finally meets with them. Then they put out a warning. And then weeks after that, the FBI starts going around to people saying, no, there's no Al-Qaeda threat. Doesn't exist. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Well, I think it just lends to what we've been saying all along, right there. For one, we know some of those sources told Khalid and other folks that our guys weren't going to get in the way and weren't going to stop them. So that's just what you're watching there. The federal agencies denying that it's even credible intelligence or that there's a possibility it could happen, but it goes to the same thing, because really the crux of the whole thing is the amount of people that came in the 4 years of Biden. That's tens of millions of folks, could be up to 30 million or more came in just during those 40 years. So if anybody doesn't think our enemies aren't going to filter people in, which again, we know that 50,000 or so Chinese men came into this country. What's that about? It's no different, right? They had an opportunity, so they definitely came in and used that. Now the people that are trying to tell you that it's a single source or it's not possible, they're either complete idiots and imbeciles, but you got to think the positions they're in, that's probably not the case. Or they're complicit or compromised or both.
The guy who posted that originally is not an idiot. I want to make that clear. It was just a good opportunity to basically speak to what Sarah's been speaking to, but it's not somebody who's, closely following 9/11 2.0, but that guy's a pretty intelligent guy.
Well, that's my point. The people that are doing this in those positions, they're not stupid. So this isn't just because they were so dumb they didn't know. That's what my point was. These are usually very smart people in these positions. That's how they got there, and then to come out and say what they're saying just lends to either they're compromised or they're complicit or they're both.
So the guy who made that post, he's a private citizen. He's really busy with things like, rescuing children. He's got a what do you call it? Like a nonprofit for rescuing child sex trafficked kids. It's just not something that's in his wheelhouse. I just want to make it clear we weren't taking a shot at that guy. People don't know what they don't know. But in your case, what you're talking about, government agents or people who work for the government,
yes,
positions of power, they will have blood on their hands.
Well, look at it this way. So when we first went into Iraq, that first year, there wasn't really any rules, right? So when we captured people and turned them over, there really wasn't any paperwork or anything else. We just handed them to them. The following subsequent years, and certainly by the time I got back there in 2006, you had to have 2 or 3 independent sources, right, to action anything. And that is in special operations at the tip of the spear. You still had to have 2 or 3 independent sources to be able to action anything. And that is why, you have to make sure that your information is credible. And even then, we still had dry holes and dry runs. Why? Because people lie. Yeah, it's just the way it is. And sometimes the bad guy either wants you to take out his competition, or they're just putting you out there doing nothing so that you're not on them, basically.
Yeah,
yeah.
S2, do you want to add anything to this?
I had something I was going to add to it, but it kind of went in and out.
Well, tell you what.
I look at a lot. I look at a lot of different sources for things, and I tend to look at the less traveled roads quite a bit. For instance, I'll look at government agencies, and the ones that I look at are not the ones that are running their mouths all the time. The ones that I look at that have been quiet, and then all of a sudden they put something out of a warning, like we were getting from the NCTC, those warnings that were coming out. But the thing that disturbs me the most is the FBI running around telling people that, oh, this couldn't happen here. This is a nothing burger. And the way I look at it is, for the last 4 years, the FBI basically has been managing these what I would call mini terrorist attacks going around the country. And you basically take away their mainstay of what gives them the justification for existence in the first place. So sure, they're going to run around and tell everybody it's a nothing burger, because that way the domestic terrorism gets to keep on going, and they get to come in and say they'll capture one guy and that they probably gave him dynamite and timers and all this other stuff. Say, hey, you want to go blow something up? And they say, yeah. Well, then they go and send him off and spin it off into the dust somewhere. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, he gets caught. Yeah, we caught a terrorist. So yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't make sense for the FBI to be doing this.
Interesting angle. I hadn't considered that before, us to appreciate that. Jeff, I got to come to you on this. Why on earth are they downplaying this, if you have any different opinion to offer than us?
Well, Okay, the single source intel is always an issue. However, if that single source has a documented track record of being accurate, you give it more credibility. In the agency, we had approvals for reporting on someone. There was an EA, exceptional approval, which means first time, maybe the guy looks like he's got access, whatever. Then there's the provisional operating approval, POA, which means, yeah, he's got some track record, but we're continuing to vet him. And then you have the OA, operating approval, which means the guy has a lengthy track record of providing accurate information. And the example I would use would be Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. We're trying to keep the Russians out of Cuba, blah, blah, blah. We had a single source of information on the Russian missiles, and it was a guy named Oleg Penkovsky. He was a Soviet military intelligence officer. Gave us the frickin' crown jewels on the first time we met him.
Wow.
He had a track. I mean, oh my God. In fact, everyone, when he gave it to us, everyone said, this has got to be bullshit. No, it was 100% true. And he was the one that allowed us to push Khrushchev to the wall because we knew exactly when their missiles were going to be operational because this guy told us. Okay, single source, but the best source. And he's known as the spy who saved the world as a result of that because he prevented World War III from starting in 1962. So single source doesn't mean bad source. However, when you have a single source, you're always trying to verify it through. You look at all your other sources and say, who else has access to this type of information? Can they corroborate any of this? And so you're always trying to, okay, this guy gave us stuff. It looks great. He's a good guy. But you always want to corroborate it if you at all can. If you have 10 other sources and you ask them and 8 of them say, yeah, it kind of looks like what's going on, then it's a good source. So don't get hung up on single source. But thing is, no one tells you how good their source is. You don't know. It could be a crap source. It could be a great source.
I appreciate you sharing your experience on that. That was awesome information. I'm going to leave you up center stage because I want to come right back to you on this, because for those people who aren't aware, in addition to being a CIA case officer, Jeff is a engineer. So Sarah Adams says, what did I just read? Breaking news, Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced that Russia successfully tests Poseidon nuclear-capable doomsday torpedo capable of triggering radioactive tsunamis, rendering coastal cities uninhabitable. Actually, the intelligence came out and said 1,500 miles inland after not much action there.
Well, okay.
Give me your thoughts.
Old news.
Okay.
Russians have had nuclear torpedoes since the late 50s, early 60s. When the Glomar Explorer went after the sunken Russian sub in the Pacific and they were pulling up the submarine, they had nuclear torpedoes on board. This is not new. I mean, this is like saying we have developed a weapon that we can launch from land, goes up into the atmosphere, flies through space, and then crashes down on you. Oh my God. Well, it's called a ballistic missile. This is not news.
Jeff, I have a question for you. Just because you can launch a nuclear torpedo underwater and it hits a coastal town, isn't that kind of the equivalent of a dirty bomb at the end?
It depends on the warhead. Most warheads don't produce that much fallout now because they're more efficient. And most of the fallout from an attack on a city, I mean, because a warhead only has 40, 50 pounds of fissile material. What it does is it irradiates shit on the ground, which it blows up into the air, which it then falls on everybody. And most of the fissile products from a nuclear weapon don't last very long.
Well,
You
that's my
get
kind of my
more.
point.
Well,
That's
you
kind
get
of my
more stuff from a reactor, a power reactor, than you would from a warhead. As
Well, that's
far
why I
as
was kind of asking,
crap.
isn't this kind of a nothing burger?
Yeah, it is. It's very much a nothing burger, and it's a 50-year-old, or actually, as I'm old now, it's a 60-year-old nothing burger. This shit's been around for 6 decades. You can put a warhead on anything, and you put it on you take a torpedo, and you lower the speed, and you lengthen the distance, and you let it go out 100 miles or 200 miles, or hell, you can make it go 1,000 miles if you really want to, and then it detonates. Okay, they could have done that 60 years ago.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah, it's just not, and we could do it too. We can do it. It's not that big a deal.
Good
What's
deal.
the difference between a sub-launched cruise missile and one of these torpedoes? Cruise missile goes faster. That's the only difference.
Awesome clarification. So Randy, I'm going to come to you next on this one. This is pretty shocking stuff. So meanwhile, in Sudan, heartbreaking clip, Islamists force Christians to dig their own graves before burying them alive. There's a Christian genocide happening right now all across Sudan, Nigeria, and Syria, and more. The genocide is being primarily conducted by Islamist militants. Politicians and legacy media remain completely silent on the matter as Europe continues to be invaded by Islamists. They don't want you taking a glimpse into the future. Think about it. This is not a very long video, and it doesn't go into the final stage.
لا تظلمن إذا ما كنت مقتدرا وظلم آخره يفضي إلى الندم واحذر أخي من المظلوم دعوته لا تأخذنك سهام الليل في الظلم تنام عيناك والمظلوم منتبه يدعو عليك وعين الله لم لا تظلمن.
Wow. So I did a little bit of reading on this, Randy, and basically that little pocket there, they force them into the pocket, then they backfill the hole. So it's probably extends things longer than if they put the dirt right on top of them. But I don't see anything in the legacy media or American media talking about the genocide that's happening. And you're talking thousands of Christians.
Well, I think it's very telling, right? It's there's a there has to be a reason they're ignoring it, and it's not just because they don't want to talk about it, or that's not it. The reason would be probably more nefarious, that they know this is what they're counting on to come here. I have no doubt about this. I mean, we look at just in the last couple of years, since all those people did come in Biden, we know there were a bunch of Muslims that did too. There's a bunch more in Deer Park, Michigan than there was before the last previous 4 years. And a lot of them were illegal aliens. And so at the end of the day, the people, we're talking about that small group of people that are actually running this show know that that's what they're bringing here. That's what's going to happen. So, and again, they're still telling you that Islam is the religion of peace. So if they showed things like that, one, it blows that narrative up. And two, they know that Christians here, even though we're not as Christian as we used to be, would be upset about it. We should be doing something about it. Again, we go do stuff all over the world for all kinds of reasons, but that's going on and we're not lifting a finger. We're basically letting it happen. That's the truth of it.
Well, you said it, the religion of peace, right? So this is the religionofpeace.com. We've shown it many times. I've been following this guy for well over 20 years. These numbers are pretty shocking for people who haven't been tracking this and have been insulated without any news coming in from outside America. But Islamic terrorists have carried out more than 48,431 deadly terror attacks since 9/11. So then the Jihad report, which is 30 days. So just the past 30 days. This is part of the list of killings in the name of Islam maintained by the religionofpeace.com. Most of these incidents are terror attacks. A handful are honor killings or Sharia executions. During this time period, 30 days, the past 30 days, there were 137 Islamic attacks in 17 countries, in which 2,452 people were killed and 463 were injured. Look at this one. In Sudan, 1,500 African civilians reported executed by Janjaweed militia. These are all Christians. Come down
There's
here.
another one down there, 460. Yep.
Sudan. Yep. 460 patients and their families are massacred. Same group, Janjaweed, which until I caught it this morning here on religionofpeace.com, I'd never heard of them. It looks like the Nigeria stuff maybe is rolled off here as far as the big stuff, but there have been days and weeks where they've killed over 2,000 Christians in Nigeria. It's really, really bad there. Pardon me, S2, do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, the thing about those statistics that we don't see there is they don't say how many of those killings were Christians.
Yeah.
And I kind of doubt the veracity of that piece of propaganda that you showed earlier, because dude might have been in there digging a hole, but he was smiling while he was doing it. I mean, I don't know if anybody caught that.
It's all over X, and whether that video is questionable or not, the practice isn't. There's people who've
I just have a concern where we're talking in terms of Christians being murdered around the world by Islam. How many of those in those attacks were Christians, and were they targeted for Christians, or were they just targeted because because a lot of that stuff is tribal. They'll go after specific tribes over there for whatever reason, and you don't know what that is at that point. So I'm putting a skeptical light on this as far as what I'm looking at.
So it's easily verified in Nigeria that they have specifically targeted Christians and killed many thousands of them. The same goes for Syria, but it's a little bit less than Nigeria. I did a deep dive on this last month. The video that was shown, whether the video is propaganda or legit or not, they are killing Christians and specifically targeting them. And there's people who've weighed in who've actually boots on the ground over there. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be a dick, but there's quite a bit of evidence out there that they are specifically targeting Christians in African nations and, towards the Middle East, the northeast corner of Africa as well. But moving on from there to the next one, speaking of Africa, just wonderful stuff here. This guy's such an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
This is unreal. What's going on in Minneapolis? Omar Fatih waves foreign flag, speaks a foreign language, pledges his loyalty to Somalia, tells Somalians to elect him. This is a rally in Minneapolis, 32 seconds.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, so none of us speak this pig Latin bullshit, so I'm not going to listen to the rest of it. But this guy here has all the genetic features of somebody from Somalia, and I don't remember if I expounded on this in the past or not, but I went to a couple AIs and said, why does everybody from Somalia look the same? The bulbous heads and so on and so forth, bulging eyes. And every single one of them admonished me for being a racist, and then went on to say that Somalia has the highest percentage of homogeneity in the entire world, and that it's approximately 90% of Somalia have the exact same genes, the exact same gene pool. And how did that happen?
Inbreeding.
Inbred, yep.
Right. I mean, it's, I don't want to, take a shot at my friends in Tennessee, but it's kind of like where your father's your favorite uncle sort of thing. So anyway, moving on from there.
I think that's Arkansas, but whatever.
Well,
I thought it was West Virginia.
Y'all are just
West Virginia. Hey, I'd like you to meet my sister and my cousin. And there's only one person standing there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now we're not making friends tonight. And that's not good. That's what we do, right? We make friends with people.
We make fun of our friends. If we didn't, we wouldn't care.
That's
right.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't be friends.
So this is interesting from Alex Sky. Today at church, the pastor said after 9/11, churches were packed, but only for about 6 weeks. Now he sees a surge in attendance after the Kirk incident. People are searching for comfort, answers, and connection. The question is, will it last this time, or will we drift back into old habits once the despair fades? And on that topic, so this kind of segues into our main topic tonight. I was telling the panel backstage, And for the life of me, I can't remember who it was because I didn't write it down, but there was somebody who was friends with Charlie Kirk and made a post on X earlier today. And somebody came along and said, you know, you should be more willing to hear other people's opinions. And the guy responded and said, Charlie was one of my best friends. Charlie exemplified letting the other side speak. As a matter of fact, I look at it, he let them speak because he put the rope on free spools, allowed them to hang themselves. But this guy said, there's no sense in trying to be politically correct anymore, because whether you're politically correct or not, they want to kill you. They want you dead, sort of thing. So it was just a really interesting point. And I think it goes good with Nick Freitas's comments last week, how we've crossed the Rubicon. There's no healing America. We have two different people, two different cultures inhabiting the same geography. That's never lasted in recorded history ever before. And the choices are not good. Balkanization, you know, states become their own countries, or civil war. And in both cases, that's a horrible outcome. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that before we get into the main topic. Jeff, S2, Randy, anybody want to take a swing? No? All right, fair enough. Let's jump into the main topic then for tonight. So this is episode 51 out of 144 episodes that Clede and I put together, called The Long War. And it's all predicated on post 9/11 2.0. You can watch these videos by themselves. You can watch them in any order you want. You can watch all of them. You can watch a handful. They all have value. But in order to provide that context, so people aren't saying, oh man, I missed the previous episodes, I don't know what's going on. The baseline is this: the intelligence is overwhelming, showing that the Islamic Army, which is this banner now that all the bad guys are underneath, whether it be the Taliban, Al Qaeda, ISIS, you know, ISKP, TTP, whoever, that their intentions are to attack 10 to 15 tier 2 cities in America. So cities between 100,000, 500,000 population, in a Mumbai style attack, Mumbai 2008. Watch Hotel Mumbai if you want to see a really good rendering of that, where you have these small cells, you know, they might be 2, 3, 5 guys, and you've got 10 cells in 10 to 15 cities attacking soft targets, drawing the first responders in, letting off VBIEDs, and killing a bunch of first responders. Many of them are going to be dressed up as first responders to slaughter people, then converging on the tier 1 trauma center in those locales, the only tier 1 trauma center, and sieging it. At that point in time, if we have 10 to 15 tier 1 trauma centers sieged across the country, we do not have the assets to unsiege them. FBI has 4 HRT teams, hostage rescue teams. They're not equipped to interdict thousands of hostages. The only people who can really do this is Delta Team and the Rangers, and Delta Team being the ones who have to go in and kill all the bad guys. It would be a very long siege. Then the next part to it is, you know, Randy kicked it off at the beginning. We have many millions of people in this country now who hate our guts. And it would be hubris to think that they are not going to seek retribution against us, whether it be for GWAT or something else. 9/11 2.0 is the kickoff to a new normal, where we have terrorist attacks on a frequent and regular basis, much like Africa and the Middle East is concerned. So that's why we put this long war series together, because we're looking at it from every possible angle that we can. And yes, we're biased. I mean, we're all Christians, but at the end of the day, I don't know of anything else that's common across the country as far as a foundation is concerned, whether that be, you know, figurative, metaphorically, physical, but a spiritual foundation that has always displayed resilience, which, again, Christianity. But churches could do all kinds of things, will do all kinds of things, right? They can serve as command centers for community stability. When the government fails, they can provide shelter, they can provide food distribution networks, moral framework, you know, so that help lift people back up again instead of going into despair. And so I would say faith communities are as natural of a mutual aid society, not group society, during disasters, because people already have that sense of community. Maybe it's not as much as when we grew up, like Randy said, because our country's been flooded with people who hate us, which actually started in 1965 with LBJ's Immigration and Nationality Act 1965, which opened the floodgates around the world. But still to this day, Christians are the majority in America. American values are predicated on, our Christian forefathers. So at the end of the day, churches are in a kind of unique position. So let's get into segment number 1, facing the nightmare when terror hits home. So picture this: waves of attacks cripple power grids, highways, cities overnight, leaving people scared and scrambling. Phones go dark. Helplines are jammed up, meaning 911 among 911. You got 911 on the brain. 911. So now you have this fog of fear. You've got first responders, whether it be cops or paramedics, stretched thin. You've got many of them have been killed in the secondary and tertiary attacks by the bad guys. All of a sudden, neighborhood churches flip from Sunday worship to all night or all day and night refuge, dishing out, water, blankets, giving people some element of hope, because there will be a lot of dead bodies. And I think that when the suits in DC, I'm trying to think of the right word, fumble, let's say, it's going to be Americans, the everyday Americans like all of us, who step up and help each other and pull us out of this mess. So, Randy, I'm going to come to you first, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. What do you see as like the first opportunity or signs that faith groups would jump in during the initial hours of chaos? Because as we know, this goes on for quite a period of time, the initial attack, but I think that some of them will spring into action pretty quickly.
Well, I think that's a good point. I was just sitting here trying to weigh those odds myself. And unfortunately, I don't know that, because we have, as a nation and as a society, we've become very lazy in that respect, that we now, which can be a good thing, but not when it's used against you. But we now want to believe the best, right? That everybody's there to do the best job that they can, and that somehow it's going to end up working out. And even if it's bad, we'll get through it within a short period of time. But, this may not be that. So I don't know that initially we'll see a bunch of Christians step up, but I think if it lasts 2 or 3 days worth, you may see some of our some of the civilian population stepping up to make a difference. I think it's going to take more than that first attack, though, just because of how stagnant this country's gotten as a society and as a people. Look at what we've got going on now, even with all this stuff with Donald Trump and the Democrats and everything else, but none of us do anything about it because we're all expecting it to work out in the end. So we've gotten used to not having to do it ourselves. And we can go back even 100 years when those elected officials went in and put us on the Federal Reserve, or whenever that was. When they came out, they did it in secret, because if they knew they did it and we knew about it, the population knew about it, they would hang them. And they said that literally. Back then, we really would have done that.
Yeah.
I don't know that we will today, or we'd be seeing people swing right now.
Yeah, true. And as you're saying that, I was thinking to myself, we have outsourced our security, meaning our society, for a really long time. And Jeff, was it your father or grandfather who was a pastor? You're on mute, Jeff. You're on mute, Jeff.
I'm glad he's taking back over that.
Take a drink. Take a drink.
Okay,
You
there
have
we
to
go.
take a shot.
Sorry.
You have to take a shot.
My father and my grandfather were pastors.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so here's my question, and it builds off of what Randy's question, what his answer was. What are the chances that local pastors who've, prepared for things like natural calamities, like hurricanes, floods, those sort of things, step in to assist their fellow citizens when 9/11 2.0 kicks off?
I think it's very good. I mean, if you're a true believer in the faith and you're a pastor because you feel the calling, you're absolutely going to do it. Now, this isn't Joel Osteen who wants to become a billionaire through his church. I mean, I'm talking about local people who, and what they can do is they've got the moral high ground, so to speak, that they can kind of call on their other people in their church to do the same. And it's really hard to say no to your pastor.
Yeah, fair enough.
If
Fair
he's
enough.
a good guy. I mean, if he's a genuine good Christian, it's really hard to say no.
Yeah, that's legit. That makes sense. So S2, is there anything that you can think of, like one thing that churches and pastors could do right away to, help calm people's nerves and, start them on the path to recovering from being on the X or close to the X and surviving while others died?
I think the best thing that they could do is to form your leadership, because in the middle of chaos, leadership always has to rise to the top in order for anything of any comfort to show. So I think their best thing to do would be to keep their congregations busy doing things and setting up leadership within the church, and say, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. And then, as I always like to say, everybody says, where do I start? Well, you just begin. You do something, and then everything will evolve naturally in that condition.
Fair enough. I appreciate that input. So let's move into segment number 2, Echoes from the Past, is the title I put on it, and faith that held us before. So, while 9/11 1.0 was still unfolding, churches in New York City reportedly were, overwhelmed with the number of Americans who were looking for some element of, sanity, understanding of what just happened, why it happened. And as I mentioned earlier from that X post, it hung around long enough to remind people that faith isn't a fair weather friend, because it disappeared. It evaporated in about 6 weeks, as the other person said. So then if you fast forward to things like hurricanes, in the Gulf, Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, I should say, or wildfires in California, in all of those instances, and you would know too, us too, from North Carolina, that congregations didn't wait for FEMA trucks. They didn't wait for FEMA to show up. They were out there with generators and, cooking meals for their fellow citizens. And I would argue that they glued these fractured towns back together to a large extent, not entirely, but to a large extent. Remnant Ministry, our good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers. I mean, within 24 hours, he had a team assembled, none of whom get paid, by the way, and got all the way from South Central Texas to North Carolina and stayed there for an extended period of time, many months, helping people. And, none of this stuff is a fluke, right? It's a core part of being a real American. And yes, I'm rolling with Randy's thoughts that there are those of us who are real Americans, and then there are a bunch of communist bastards who are not real Americans, and that are the cancer that's infected our country. And it's just the way it is at the end of the day. But is there do any of the three of you know of any stories related to either the day of or the days following 9/11 1.0 where churches did anything that stood out to you?
Not where I lived.
Yeah, I think that was too long ago. I don't really remember anything, but the news doesn't always cover that anymore either. Some of the things you just spoke about weren't really on the news.
That's fair.
And so they're not going to cut. It doesn't seem like they want to put Christians in a good light anymore. So that's what that would be doing. I think that what you asked earlier, yeah, I think as the days go by, churches will definitely lend a hand to help out. I think if initially, like when you asked, the only way the church would do something like right away in the beginning to help stop it is if they're some of the targets in those 15 states. If stuff start at church events or at churches, then that's a direct attack on the church. And I would hope, although you look at how the church has been as a whole in the nation over the past 20 or 30 years, it hasn't really done the right things. There's plenty of churches now that have accepted this woke and LBG, whatever you want to call all the gay and lesbian stuff. I'm just going to call it that because it's easier for me. I don't care about the alphabet. You know what I mean? But the reality is some churches, some Christian churches have embraced that. I saw one recently where a guy went in and wanted to say, had a shirt that says Jesus loves you on it, and they kicked him out of the church during service because of the shirt he had on. And so, you know, we've got a watered down version, but I do believe at the end of the day, if it gets bad enough, we will see not just the Christians. There'll be a lot of civilians that are going to say, hey, look, if we don't do something now, we're never going to. And I see there's been a couple of people put comments on there about January 6th and this and that, about what the government did. And we all know that's all true. They definitely, that was a peaceful protest that they made a big deal out of. But the reality is, if 9/11 2.0 ever kicks off, and like I've said before, if it's even 50% successful, we haven't seen anything like that in this country yet. Mm-hmm. And that will be a different day, and that people will have to wake up, or we'll just bow down right over and let them run right over us. That's our two choices when this happens.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. But this is an article from 2011. Religious leaders have offered comments to explain what spiritual lessons can be taken from the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2011 in New York City. Pastor Rick Warren offered 3 lessons to be taken from 9/11 during his sermon. And actually, they put 2011 in there instead of 2001. The stories from 2011, obviously it's September 11th, 2001. But let me get back on track here. Pastor Rick Warren offered 3 lessons to be taken from 9/11 during his sermon on Sunday. The first is that life is a gift that is fragile and brief. Whatever you're going to do with your life, you'd better get it done, said Warren. The second lesson Warren mentioned is one of community, that everyone needs community. In the third lesson, he highlighted that everybody has a spiritual hole in their heart that only God can fill. He highlights that people should never forget him when times are good, and that they do not need to fear. The Bible never says grieve not. It says fear not, said the Saddleback Church pastor, who believes that the event also helped people come back to God. God loves each of us as if there were one of us. He has never made a person he doesn't love. Maybe you've wandered off from him. The 9/11 anniversary would be a good time to come home. Interesting message there. Jeff, I want to come to you and get your thoughts on, lessons learned from 9/11 1.0 as far as faith and spirituality is concerned.
I think with the initial attack, people say, why would God let this happen? Okay, and that's a natural response. But you also got to look at that. His job is it's to guide our hearts, not our hands necessarily. And he kind of lets us do what we're going to do and then lets us learn from it. And I think the message there is that we need to see what happens and then learn from it. And so you get people, it's just like when a child dies. Why would God let a child die? It's not God's job to intervene at every decision point anywhere on the planet. It's God's job to set the rules and let humans make their own decisions. And otherwise, you wouldn't have free will. And God gives us free will. He allows us to make mistakes. But the objective, I think, and I'm not a theologian, but I think the objective from God's perspective is learn from it. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But God is not the puppet master telling us exactly what to do. If that were true, like the world would be just
different
utopia.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be no bad things anywhere, but it's not.
Yeah, legitimate point. So, Jeff, appreciate your time tonight. It's top of the hour, and I know you.
Yeah, I got to roll out of here.
Get rolling, but thanks again, and we will see you on Monday.
Okay, guys. You guys have a good
See you next week, Jeff.
Yep. All right, thanks, Jeff.
Bye.
So, S2, is there any examples you can think of in any point in time in America's history? And I'm sure there's tons of examples. I'm just wondering what stands out to you, where believers teamed up with locals. So churches teamed up with locals and managed to take, a big disaster, basically a big defeat, and turn it into something, good, like have a big turnaround from basically SHTF to, man, we're going to survive. We're going to get out of this thing.
No, you brought it up earlier. The most recent one that I've actually been part of was the Western North Carolina Hurricane Helene. I saw a lot of people out there that they had nothing. They had nothing. And when I delivered our truckload of supplies up there, I didn't necessarily know where to go. I saw signs of where to take things. And frankly, I was looking for Doc Pete when I went out there also. And that was where I ended up, was where his team was. But like I said, those people had nothing when I got there. And you saw people coming in and standing in line. There was armed security. They were looking for people to come down out of the mountains because you had the hill people up there, and the hill people don't come down unless they have to. They just don't. They're up in the hills for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was starting to leave from my time out there, I started to see different attitudes with people change, because you had the people that were the recipients of the aid, and then you had the people that were the givers of the aid, and how the people were just so thankful that they had the support of the whole country. And I mean, literally, I think it was the whole eastern seaboard from western Tennessee over to the ocean that had come down. They had come down, they had come up, they had come over to deliver this aid to these people. And I think that's a big thing to do. And when you look at the impact that it had on people out there, I don't think that place is far from being rebuilt at this point.
Yeah.
In fact, it may never be completely rebuilt, because we have government interests in that area. We have foreigners that are interested in that area, and then they're saying that some of those houses will never be rebuilt there. Some of those people will never have their homes back there again. And I think that area can be turned around. They're going to have to get rid of a bunch of people out there, but I think it can be turned around based on what I saw of how humans were behaving that day.
Well, how about Doc Pete and y'all and Dr. Molly setting up a treatment center of sorts, but in tents, and, providing some, level of first and second aid to people. And it made the county, Avery County, look like shit. So 4 weeks later, they came and shut it down.
Yeah. That was one of the things that I was really angry about. That, and I think they didn't want people flying helicopters out there either, even though they were saying that they had airborne operations going on out there, and that was the reason why they didn't want helicopters flying out there. But that was a lie. There was nobody out there from FEMA doing anything.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable what happened there. I've actually got an interesting article here. How Southern Baptists trained more disaster relief volunteers than the Red Cross. So this is from 2017, but just the highlights on this. The Southern Baptist Convention's disaster response is so massive it financially trails only the Red Cross and the Salvation Army, and has more trained disaster relief volunteers than either one. And down a little bit further here, the grassroots growth could perhaps only have happened in the SBC, so Southern Baptist Church, which is pretty incredible. And people may like to make fun of Southern Baptists, but you want to talk community in, a church unit or a church belief system, Southern Baptist is about as tight as it gets in my experience. So moving on to segment 3, and it kind of ties into it, like hands-on heroes, like churches feeding people, sheltering people. So, when the roads are clogged, the stores are empty, it's the churches that have stock, not all of them, but many of them, that essentially they turn into soup kitchens in many cases. And that happened like S2 was just saying, it happened in West North Carolina last year from Hurricane Helene. And, when people's homes got washed away and vehicles got washed away, it didn't matter how much they'd prepped, it was all gone. The mudslides took it all away. Just like he said, they had nothing. They had the clothes on their back, and that is it. So I think first and foremost, the shelter, food, and water, which are the three basics. Churches are particularly good at providing that, especially Southern Baptist churches. And it's interesting because I know a number of pastors who are the first ones to jump in, and, they work hands-on side by side with the rest of their people, unlike, say, Joel Osteen. But there are many small churches here in the Southeast that are Baptist where the pastors just roll their sleeves up and jump in. I've seen it happen many times. My brother-in-law is a pastor at the church that we go to. But again, a lot of churches that have money, especially out there in Texas, Randy, they're big enough that they've got enough under roof property that they can give a lot of people a lot of shelter. And an interesting thing is, in my experience dealing with these groups, I don't recall anybody really promoting the concept of charity. It's more so promoting the concept of, we're doing what we have to do because this is our community. And, it's not like, well, we're doing you a favor sort of thing. Although I have heard some other organizations that have done that I'll leave them out for tonight. But I'm wondering, Randy, what your thoughts are based on all this calamity that we have going on in America, the prospect of 9/11 2.0 on the horizon, plus, all these other things. What would you think churches should be doing today to prepare for the wheels coming off without breaking the piggy bank? Should they be doing food drives, or what are your thoughts on how they get themselves in the best possible position to help their fellow Americans?
Well, they should be doing that. Food drives, clothes drives, blanket drives, you name it. That's what should be going on, because as we've already mentioned, supplies and food and water are going to be very important if something like this happens. And again, if it's even 50% successful, it will make a huge impact in this country. There's no doubt about that. I think you're right. And you're for sure. But like I said, is if it gets bad enough, you will see churches and you will see locals, because that's what we've always done in America, whether it's there in Florida with hurricanes or the hurricane that went and sat on top of, above Asheville, North Carolina, up there in the mountains. People came out of the woodwork, even though the government wasn't there to help. And I get it. They were able to stymie some of that. But now if you think about, if it's actually 15 different cities, it's going to be a lot harder to stop that, isn't it? I mean, they're not going to be able to just step in, FEMA, and tell them, oh, no, you can't build tiny houses because they don't pass inspection. But here, we've got a tent for them. They're not going to be able to do that so easily. And then same thing, with the topic of God, he's not going to stop it either, because here's reality, folks. Satan was his favorite guy. So before all of us, when they were up in heaven, before Satan and those angels fell, they were all in heaven with God. And here's why you have free will and free choice on the ground here, because apparently we're still able to make decisions there, because at some point Satan decided he wanted God's position. He wanted the power. He thought he deserved it, and he went after it. Well, guess what? He did a FAFO, and he found out when him and the rest of them dropped out of heaven to earth, he found out he wasn't as big a deal. But my point is, if you're going to make it to heaven, you're going to have to prove that you deserve to be there, because otherwise you could turn out to be just like Satan, and in a few years or whatever, decide that you want to take over. So I think that that's one of the reasons why free will and free choice exist, because even in heaven, you're going to have to follow along and follow the rules. That's just the way it is. And, we look at, you talked about Osteen, that guy, that is not a real church. If you go into Joel Osteen's church, as big as it is, as much money as that guy's bringing in, he will not speak of the blood of Jesus. He will not speak of the consequences and hell. It will not happen. It's all about feel good. And, God wants you to be happy. Yes, God wants us to be happy, but that comes at a price also. Can't just be any happiness. So, going back to the original thing there, Americans, this is what we do, and we've always done. So if they hit us that hard, we will come back at some point. Now, we may have to end up fighting some of our own local governments to do so. But I think if something like this kicks off, that will take the gloves off and people will stop saying, we're going to listen to you and these elected officials that clearly don't have our best interests at heart.
Yeah, that's for sure. I've got a very specific question for S2, but before I do that, I just want to mention an anecdotal example of really, really good Baptist people helping others. So this is my home gym in Arlington, Texas, the original Metroflex. This is where Ronnie Coleman's from. A good friend of mine, Brian Dobson, founded this gym.
Hey, I remember one of those pictures.
Yeah, you're probably in some of these here somewhere.
I don't know, but I remember when y'all were sitting on the Longhorn.
Yeah, exactly. Downtown Fort Worth. Yeah, for sure. Right there. Actually, did you take that picture?
I think so.
Yeah,
it was either me or your wife.
I'm pretty sure that you took that one. But
I think so. And
yeah,
then she got on.
she did. That's correct. So if you look in the background of this picture, you'll see Luke 137. And this is the dirtiest, filthiest gym in the entire world. The music volume is set on like 99 out of 10. And so it's difficult to carry on a conversation. But Brian, I'm not going to tell his whole story. If you're interested in Brian Dobson's story, the man who made Ronnie Coleman, the man who made Branch.
Oh, is this gym in Fort Worth?
No, it's on Cooper in Arlington.
Arlington, okay.
There's Branch Warren. These are all people that were made what they are by my good friend Brian Dobson. Brian is this guy
right there.
Brian Dobson's this guy beside me right here. So he has a best-selling book called My Hero Walks on Water that tells his whole story, which is a phenomenal story, by the way. And I'll tell it some other time because it's very long. But what I will say is that he has been feeding homeless people at a mission on Beach Street in Fort Worth.
Oh, yeah.
For over 30 years. And Randy will tell you, so here in Central Florida, Beach Street is where all the multi-million-dollar homes are. In Fort Worth, Beach Street is the roughest part of the metro. It's really, really rough. So twice a year, Brian has these big food and clothing drives at the gym where thousands of people show up. And he does it at Thanksgiving and he does it at Christmas. And one year, it was a Thanksgiving. It was freezing cold. We're all there to help. There's like bits of freezing rain coming down. People are, hungry, et cetera, and we cooked up a bunch of game meat because Brian looks after hogs on a golf course in Burleson. Anyway, this girl, she comes, stands next to Brian, and Brian says, "Hey, looking at the watch, he says, we got to get started here, man. These people are hungry. They need their food." She turned around and said, "Well, the pastor is stuck at 360 and I-20. If anybody knows, that's where I-20, comes down and the traffic's always a nightmare there. He'll be here in 20 minutes. You can't start without him." And this church had raised $73,000 for Brian's cause. And it was the first church that he ever invited to participate. And I've known Brian for years. The guy is he never gets mad. He's just a super, super guy. He looked at this girl and he said, "We're not doing this so that you can be on the cover of the Dallas Morning News," because there's a reporter standing there as well. He said, "We do this to help our fellow man. And here's the deal. Your church can keep the $73,000. I want you to leave my property right now." Looks at the reporter from the Dallas Morning News and says, "I'm asking you not to put any pictures or anything in your paper about this. This is not about this church that raised this money. I'm not hanging out waiting for somebody here to get his picture taken, while all these people freeze." He jumps up in the back of a semi and just starts throwing stuff out. Like he had autographed jerseys from the Cowboys and so on and so forth. That's a real American, a real Baptist, a real God-fearing man. His book, again, My Hero Walks on Water, tells his story. It is absolutely incredible. He's one of my heroes, to be quite frank. He's just an incredible human being. So with all of that being said, I have a question for you, S2, because you have hands-on experience with this, and we're on the volunteering topic right now. How do volunteers keep their energy level up, S2, when y'all are pulling double shifts, working through the night, days on end, weeks on end. I have not been in that situation. You know, we have lots of hurricanes here, but I've had my own shit to look after from hurricanes and haven't been part of any rescue teams, but you have. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And you're on mute.
Well, there's an old saying is that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
Yep.
So first off, if you're going to be involved in these kinds of things, you have to have a team. And I've been harping on this a lot lately. If you don't have a team that you have worked with and you have trained with, you're a bunch of individuals running around that do not have a plan. And in order to help other people, you have to have a plan. What is the job of each person on your team? What is he capable of doing? And what has he been trained to doing? And have you cross-trained with some of those other people? So if something happens to that guy, you can pick up double duty for the other guy. Keeping your energy up is simple of making sure that you eat, making sure that you drink, especially making sure right now that you're doing everything that you can to keep yourself in good physical shape. Because if you're not in good physical shape, how are you going to be able to climb down that mountain to pull somebody out of a ravine? How are you going to be able to pick somebody up and put them across your shoulder and carry them out of a fire and put them and take them to safety? You can't. So you first off, get yourself a team, because you guys are going to be the ones that are going to be working together. That way, when if you've got a 4 or 6 man team, one of you can at least get some sleep, because that's going to
there's a
be another
rotation.
thing.
Yeah.
That's going to be another thing that you've got to do. So, and you have to have an eating schedule, no matter what. You go over there and get something to eat right now. You make sure you're carrying a bunch of water on you so that you can keep up. Yeah, supplementation doesn't hurt. I'm not a big fan of energy drinks at all.
No,
but I'm a big proponent of methylene blue, which I'm on right now, and that really keeps me throughout my days. It allows me to keep a very laser beam focus on what I'm doing. So those kinds of things help too.
Yeah, I appreciate that, us too. That's great.
And and get some Carnival while you're at it.
Carnival, there we go.
Well, yeah, if you are anywhere near where calamity may strike, get yourself some Carnival. To use the code EATMEAT, all one word, get 10% off. We'll talk a little bit more about these guys at the end of the podcast, but this is an incredible product with a 25-year shelf life, and it's tastes incredibly good. So there's a message from Chris S saying he ordered the POC links today. So I did want to mention that today is the last day that you can get the POC links with the free global coverage SIM cards. So you can still get 2 of these radios, which are a combination of FRS and LTE, which is the older technology for cell phones. But for $399, you get 2 of these. You can buy more than that, and the discounts go up as you buy more. And if you buy tonight by midnight, you'll never have to pay the network fee for global coverage. So no matter where you are, one push button, you can communicate with your family, friends, whatever, around the world simultaneously. Think of like the old Nextel phones, essentially. It's very similar, usage-wise to that. After tonight, it's going to be somewhere between $29 and $65 a year per radio for global reach. So, I'm not suggesting this is the only thing you should have in your communications kit, but it's a really excellent, not very expensive layer to add to your other comms. Those of you who know me know that, 10 is 9, 9 is 8, 7 is 6, so on and so forth. I don't believe in the 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none, because that's not enough. But for the cost plus free global coverage, great deal. So if you go to our Substack, survivaldispatch.news, and you scroll down ever so slightly, here's tonight's episode, Faith Won't Fall When America Does. Click on it, scroll down. You can click the picture, or you can click this hyperlink here. It will take you there. You'll get them at the introductory price, because they're going up in price soon as well. But you'll also get the global coverage, which you're not going to get after today. They did send me a note saying that they're working on negotiating something that maybe they might get some discounts going forward, but we won't know anything about that until next week. And if you jump on over to our Substack, hit this top story up here, join the Guardians Intel Network. Something I forgot to mention earlier tonight that's really, really germane to the conversation. You know, the legacy media just doesn't tell the truth. All they do is spew propaganda. So when SHTF happens and people are trying to get information, trying to figure out what's believable, they're probably going to get hit legacy media. They might hit X, and they might have some citizen journalists that they follow, but it's doubtful that they have citizen journalists across the entire country. When you sign up to be a Survival Dispatch Guardian, you tap into a community of like-minded people across the country, and we effectively short circuit the propaganda loop and the search for honest information. So if SHTF is happening across the country, we have Guardians spread out across the country. We have 4 dedicated signal channels for different purposes. We have an emergency notification system. And if you come as a Guardian to our community, you will get verified firsthand information from other Guardians and not have to worry about the BS that comes out from, you know, the legacy media. And you get more than that. You know, you get direct access to our entire team. You get behind the scenes content. You get a bunch of e-magazines that are worth about $400 total. You get daily sit rep sources, et cetera, et cetera. But the community is the key thing. And right now it's 30% off. Yes, sir.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
something that a lot of people don't understand. Okay, the signal channels is great and everything, but what a lot of people don't understand is that the team, you, Randy, me, Jeff, everybody that's in the team, everybody that's in the intel part of it, we are networked across the world with things. So it's not just here in the United States. We have people that we have Rolodexes of that are all over the world that we talk to on a constant basis. So you're not getting just one side of what we say. We're getting information from all around the world and from all across the United States. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to mention that as a force multiplier.
No,
Yeah,
very
I
well
was
said.
going to say the same thing, you know, and thank you for including me. But, you know, people have to realize you're on there, Jeff's on there, Khalid's on there, and there's several other professional intelligence folks that are real professionals that are on this. You're not going to find that anywhere else. If you wanted the inside track, that's what that is. If you wanted the back channels that SF guys and special operations do and intelligence folks are working with, that's what we're talking about. And that is the difference.
Well, and the other part to it is, now that we're on this topic, there's some information we can't take public because it would identify the source and potentially cost them their job, retirement, health insurance, the whole 9 yards. But we give some of that out behind the scenes. Question here from Mrs. Beanfriend. So no, these POC-Link radios, you put them into a group, and everybody in the group, when you hit the button, the PTT button, it goes to everybody else in your group. But here's a cool thing. You can have multiple groups. So we have a Guardians group on these. So when we send out emergency notifications, they go to your email, they go to the signal channel, they go to our Substack, which is survivaldispatch.news, behind the reader or Guardian only paywall. And they also go to the POC-Link radios. Now, the cool thing about that, and I don't know if I've got it logged in or not. If not, I'm not going to wait on it. But the smartphone app, if your radio, the battery dies or whatever happens, you're not in an area that has service. Check this out. Every single message that goes into that group gets recorded, and you can play it back. So for every person who's in that group, so for example, here's one. I think this was a test that we did on October 20th. Oh, my phone's Bluetooth over to that thing there. Anyway, I won't bother boring you with it anymore. But yeah, this is a heck of a deal. It's an extra tool to put in your tool bag. S2 will tell you that if we have a Walking Dead situation, like a Teotihuacan situation, the end of the world as we know it, the only hope you have is shortwave high frequency. Nothing else is going to communicate any distance, regardless of what it says on the box. But you should have all kinds of backups. We love the Garmin InReach products, by the way. You can put them on pause. They're not very expensive. You tether them to your phone. You've got an SOS button. Go to our Substack, There's articles there that we've done on comms, and Dr. Michael Fabian and I have another video coming up with some cutting edge information on putting your comms together. So let's move on to segment number 4. Apologies for the diversion there. Went a little bit longer than I originally intended, but segment number 4 is, rallying people's spirits in the face of literally collapse, rubble. And, you've got sirens going off. You have people sobbing in tears. You've got, people who've lost their life, and essentially at the end of the day, most of the time, strangers come together to help each other in the face of adversity. Look at the people who gave their lives, 9/11 1.0, that didn't have to do that, but their natural instinct kicked in to help others. And I would argue, because food's important to me, right? You can't run a V8 on a gallon of gas, but when you break bread with people, it changes the dynamic for the better, I would argue. So when you're bringing people together to eat together, have a hot cup of coffee because it's freezing cold outside, those sort of things, that's where that community piece starts to come into play. And it's almost like a quiet, unspoken power, but I know you all know what I'm talking about and that I'm preaching to the choir. But with that being said, Randy, I'd like to get your opinion on how can a quick group prayer completely change the atmosphere of how, doom and gloom things may seem, just a simple prayer in a group.
Well, what people have to realize is we're all spiritually connected, right? I know that, that's kind of in today's time, there's a lot of people that don't believe, but here's reality. It's no different than when you get a bad feeling and your gut tells you something. That is a spiritual message, whether you know it or not. We're also connected spiritually. And if we just want to go to prove it, we don't have to use religion or God or that spirituality. Just look at what we call mob mentality, right? And somehow mob mentality takes over everybody in that mob. And we know this because of riots, right? So there are instigators in the riots that definitely keep it going. But guess what? All kinds of other people then pile on and do things that they would never have done by themselves. That is because we're spiritually connected. So saying a prayer, even having your small group and having a small group prayer is now you as a small group connecting with God in the spiritual realm, and you're communicating spiritually with a spiritual entity. It's one of the reasons people don't understand the Bible. Why? Because the Bible was written in spiritual language by a spiritual being. He gave those words to each person who wrote that Bible in each book. And so that is why it's so hard for us to understand, because a spiritual being wrote it in a spiritual language. And we, as you grow your spiritualism, you can understand it better. But in the beginning, it's very hard. And that is the reason. So again, when you take a small group and used to a small group prayer, you're now connecting with the spiritual father, with God, and you're having communications with him. So what that does is that is going to give your group, one, it's going to bring you in a little tighter, but it also will probably calm whatever situation is happening at the moment down some, even if it's not a moment that there's something going on, just the mere fact that you're now communicating spiritually with your father, it brings a level of peace and calm, and it can also help guide and direct you. That's what it is. You're one, when we're reaching out to God and asking him for those things, it happens. I was trying to think of, I just heard of a case in the last day or two that was pretty amazing. What's that?
What do you think of that? Look at Chatty here.
Oh, yeah.
He's good.
Thank you, Chatty.
Nice compliment.
Thank you. So, so that is why it is important, to do that. I was thinking I had a great example that I heard about in the last day or two that, man, I just can't bring up the details to say it perfectly. But, what it was somebody asked for something in the moment and then they directly got it. And, that's because you're reaching out to a higher power than yourself and you're asking for help. And many times, if you're doing that genuinely with your heart in the right heart and soul and spirit in the right place, that answer will come and it will be what you ask for. It's when we're not connected that we, that things may go awry. But that is why that is so important. Just like a while ago when you talked about, when you asked Jeff about that, right? It's not just the Baptists, it's churches that participate in that type of thing. And, the ones that don't, they don't. That's why you see things go awry in those churches. Or even when we take the two greatest leaders besides Jesus that we ever had was David and Solomon, right? And God gave them everything they ever wanted. But in the end, they were still human and they still made mistakes and fell, and there was a price for it.
Always.
So we have to realize it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
Absolutely does. It S2, just because you participate in some of these rescue things, I got a question for you. When you're contending with an SHTF situation, how do not just church leaders, but leaders in general spot people who are slipping into despair and know that they've got to reach out to them and kind of pull them back from the call it the emotional, mental precipice?
For me, it's body language. And like Randy said too, there's also the connection aspect of it. You can sense it when you're near somebody by the way they look, the way they conduct themselves. Sometimes they'll come right out and say it. I don't know what to do. It's really not something that you can tangibly explain, because for me it's because I've been around different aspects of spiritual training for most of my adult life. But you sense things if you're trained in it. That's one of the reasons why understanding your spirituality, your connection with God, your connection with the earth, your connection with people is so important, so that you, when the time comes, you're able to feel these things. They will manifest themselves in different ways. Um, for instance, I saw early on in 2020 when we were going on through all the crap with COVID and everything, I would go to a lot of protests to participate in running security for a lot of these groups that were out there. And you could see people in the crowd that were just devastated. They were like, they knew something was coming and it wasn't good. And the only thing that you could do was look at these people and walk up and have a conversation with them. And then, you might say a Bible verse or two to them, and then they're like, they would light up, and they were okay. That made me feel better. Um, like I said, it's not really something that is tangibly that I can put any one thing on. It's a
Gotcha.
combination of things. I can see things on people. One of the things that I've always had a talent for was I can see demons on people. I can see when I can see them. I can see them jump from person to person. And a lot of people think I'm crazy, but I've pointed it out to people and I say, you watch this one, watch this person over here, watch how they behave. And then all of a sudden the demon will jump to another person, and that person just is standing there like they don't even know what's just happened. And you could see it on them. So, but like I said, as far as in the physical world, it's mostly having to do with body language and how people behave and things that they say.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's well said, S2. Before we go to the final segment, I want to just pull up a couple quick things here. I can't swear to the veracity of this post, but this person says Christians provide 80% of emergency kitchens and majority of food pantry soup kitchens. Example, Salvation Army. Christian feeds 1 million plus meals a year. Catholic charities operate 2,000 plus pantries. Our little town has more people giving to the food bank than coming to it for food. that was just posted a couple days ago, October 28th. And again, I can't speak to the veracity of that 80% number, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's what it actually was. So here's an interesting post from January when the fires were going through the Palisades. Fearless LA, my church, is opening their building as a shelter and distribution center for anyone who needs it. Over 100 beds, fresh supplies, semi-trucks full of water to give out, hot meals, diapers, toiletries, pet food. Just show up tomorrow anytime. First come, first serve. Doors open 9 a.m. Also, there will be professional counseling donated for anyone who needs it, as well as pray for anybody who wants it. And he goes on to include the address of his church there. At S2, I got to ask you a question quickly. When y'all were in West North Carolina, and I was speaking to Doc Pete as he had the opportunity to talk, I asked him and Michael Hall, I want to say they'd been there for maybe a week, and I said, what's the percentage of people like y'all from churches versus agencies, whether they be local, state, or federal, helping people? Neither one of them hesitated and said it's 90% volunteers, typically from faith-based organizations. As time went on, and I asked them the same question many weeks later, they said, yeah, actually it's changed. It's 95% volunteers from faith-based organizations and 5% from agencies. I'm just curious what you saw while you were there as well, of faith-based private individuals versus government agencies helping the people of North Carolina.
Well, to be specific, I didn't see any agencies out there helping when I was there. None.
Wow.
What I did see initially when I went out there the first time was, yeah, it was 90%. It was probably 90%. Actually, I want to say it was probably about 75% faith-based. And then you had another 25% that was just private individuals that were out there delivering supplies to these faith-based organizations. The second time I went out there, it was probably more 80%. So I'm going to go with 75 to 20, 75 split to 25, and then 80 to 20. And that's kind of how it went. And then you saw FEMA out there, but FEMA really wasn't doing anything. They were just getting in the way.
Yeah, not surprised by that whatsoever. So segment 5, final segment, is on, roots, I guess, it was the best word for this part. So basically the Christian backbone of this country, regardless of what the pundits say, America was founded on Christian principles. It permeates every aspect of our founding fathers' work. And if you want to argue it, that's fine. You can go argue with somebody else. I'm not even remotely interested in entertaining that argument. I spent many years in boardrooms conducting tests with what we call Mars teams. So like the top 7 executives in a company, to try and figure out what their core DNA is. Why did that business exist? Why did their feet hit the ground running each day? And whether or not they were, there was a strong faith aspect or complete opposite to atheist or agnostic, every single one of them espoused Christian values. And we had this list of like 100 values, and it was a 5-step process that took a number of sessions to get through. But even the ones who claimed that they had nothing to do with Christianity were espousing Christian values. It is core DNA for America, whether people want to believe it or not. So, I would argue that regardless of what's happening, 9/11 2.0, hurricanes like Hurricane Helene, economic disasters, all of that stuff, the one consistent thing that pulls people together are the churches in America, and the Christian churches in America. I'm not even going to speak to any other churches because I'm just going to leave it at that. But at the end of the day, I think that some people have this perception that faith is like, well, that's the backup. Churches are the backup. And I would argue it's the exact opposite. It's not the backup. It's the primary core DNA that's woven through American society and culture. So, Randy, question for you. especially as a warrior, a combat wounded Green Beret, how do our Christian roots that go back to the founders give us an edge in staring down like modern threats, taking on modern threats head on? How many times has Khalid said it's really hard to kill a terrorist who thinks that, you know, he's on a mission from Allah and therefore he's give his life? Yeah, maybe we're not a bunch of suicide bombers, but I would argue that faith drives a significant portion of our military's strength, let's say.
Well, you know, you've heard me say that many times also. You know what I mean? People, you know, what we do, whether it's law enforcement or special operations or intelligence guys, we're out there to help kind of manipulate and shape and bring in assets, right? And, you know, when there is somebody that thinks they're doing something for God, and of course we've used Islam, right? Because that is who basically we've been fighting for the last 20 years, and we are diametrically opposed as religions. There's no doubt about that. And when someone thinks they're doing something for God or because God has given them a mission, that it's very hard to manipulate that person, right? Because they believe it's from God. Where if it's, you know, if they really are about money or little boys or little girls or drugs or anything else, we're able to get to those people fairly easily, right? But when somebody's on a mission from God, it's very hard to convince them otherwise. And then I'll go back to our own country, right? Because you've touched on it tonight, and it's exactly, this country became to be because everybody came here to get away from the religious oppression that all the monarchs had in place in Europe. They determined what God was going to tell you or say and what the Bible meant or didn't mean. Or when they killed people for blasphemy, it's what they said was blasphemy, which may necessarily not have lined up with what God says it is. So that is, and then what you talked about is what the golden thread of America is God, right? Because he is the one who gave the message to Christopher Columbus to begin with. If you go back and you read what Christopher Columbus said, because there's a lot of stuff out there about him today that's not true, but the fact is, he said he got the message from God. That is why he got on a ship and went across the ocean, because he knew something was there. He wrote somewhere specifically, he believes in his prayer that was a message from God. So there's where it starts, right? Then Christopher Columbus, what's he do? He finally gets somebody that will fund it, and he gets in a ship, several ships, they come across, they discover America. Then it was 100 years between when he discovered North America and we actually came to settle it. And the reason that is because the tone in Europe hadn't hit the pitch that it needed to be. And when it did was when the Reformation came around, right? And now all these people were like, we're being religiously oppressed by all the kings and queens and everybody else that's in charge over here. So they left to come over to America. And that's where it started. And again, Jamestown was the first one. But guess what? Even though 2/3 of them starved to death in 3 months, some of them still survived. Then when the second one came in, Plymouth, they were trying to get to Jamestown, but a hurricane blew them off, right? And then where they came aground there was nobody that held that ground, and which they thought was odd. Well, when they came into contact with Indians, guess what the Indians told them? Well, that's because the tribe that did own that land was the most vicious around. They attacked all of us. They killed all of us. They kidnapped folks of ours. And then someday a weird plague came along and it killed all of them. The reason those other tribes didn't take over that land is because they were worried that plague may kill them. And I could go on. There's a whole more story of the first Indian that came from that tribe that helped the Plymouth folks. But again, that's the golden thread of God that made that happen. That hurricane blew them off, put them on the land that wasn't even occupied when it had been cleared off. So again, then we set about going through making this country what it is. And the reason our forefathers wanted a Bible, the first official act of Congress was to print the Bible in English, because they said it needed to be in every home, every business, and everywhere, because then we also taught it in school until the late 1800s. The Bible is what we use to teach school, because they understood that every man, woman, and child need to be able to read the Bible, understand it. Why? Because of just what you mentioned earlier. Because people that believe in the Bible and Christians that follow that are more giving, right? They care about things. And when bad things happen, guess what they do? They step up and help you out. They start the food drives. Their churches bring the food. That is what we're exactly talking about and what makes us a Christian nation. And that is why it was so important, because Christians just are nicer people and they do better things in society than everybody else. And I saw it in the comments earlier, but it's the truth. When have you seen the Muslims or Islam help anybody, even their own people? You don't see it anywhere, or any other religion. Do you see them going out and trying to help other people in other lands? No, it's Christians that do that. And then, as you mentioned, when bad things happen, it's the churches that come out. And just like S2 talked about, that was them that brought the food and to help out there. It was the Christians that did that. And that is why it is so important.
All right. So we haven't done an audience poll yet tonight. If you agree with the person who said Randy's on fire tonight, put a 1 in the live chat.
Oh, thank you.
If you think he's not on fire tonight, put a 0 in the live chat, whatever platform you're on. This is going out to 9 different platforms. It'll be interesting to see the results come in from that. So S2, a very specific question for you, because you've seen it unfold firsthand. When there's a long haul recovery that has to take place, how do churches basically keep people focused on, for lack of a better term, but it's an accurate statement, traditional American conservative Christian values and morals?
I don't think there's ever a loss of that focus to begin with, from what I experienced. I think by and large, there were a few bad actors that show up out in these scenarios. They always do. But they all end up getting their just desserts. In fact, I saw a story today where one of these bad actors was, I guess he had all of his halfway houses shut down in North Carolina.
Okay.
But I don't think there was ever a loss of focus on that I saw in the first place. I mean, you don't go do these things unless this isn't in your DNA to begin with. The people that don't show up to help, they don't have it in their DNA, because we've become so apathetic in this country about things that we're all willing to sit back and say, oh, somebody else will do it. I don't have to do anything.
True story.
So, like I said, I did not experience needing to keep anybody focused on traditional Christian values while we were out there. You may have somebody that gets frustrated every once in a while, but what you inevitably see is other people within that group will take that person aside and say, hey, you probably should not talk that way at this point in time, because this is a pretty heavy situation that you're involved in, and maybe think about that for a second. But that's usually due to fatigue when that kind of thing happens. So once again, I don't see where anybody was really, the churches really needed to step up and keep people focused with those values. I think the biggest thing they needed to do was to get those people that were out there taking advantage of the situation and getting to those people and so, what are you doing? You're not helping, get out.
Yeah.
That's really the way I saw it.
Yeah, fair enough. As you were saying, I was thinking to myself, we are in the Bible Belt here in the Southeast, and it would be interesting to hear, somebody's perspective from another part of the country, maybe the Pacific Northwest, where Satan lives, and get their perspective on those things as well. But with that being said, that's the final segment for tonight, and we'll end by saying, throughout our history, American history, churches, faith institutions, whatever you want to call them, have proven to be, irreplaceable during calamities, national emergencies, regional emergencies, whatever the case may be. But, they're kind of the center of the anchor for many communities across America and have been, since the beginning of this country. And I think that there's a lot of people now subscribing to people like Keith Graves, who provide all these different pieces of the puzzle as far as making churches stronger, safer, better equipped. His churches, for example, in Idaho, they have a very robust communications network between 4 different locations with encrypted radios, business class radios, which are encrypted, which they didn't have that stuff before Keith left California and moved to Idaho. And I would say, just, as far as our enemies are concerned, they've done a magnificent job of pitting our country against each other, this chasm that'll never be solved. There's people like myself that will never extend an olive branch to anybody who thinks you can cut off your parts and become the other sex. I'm never going to reconcile with somebody who thinks it's funny that Charlie Kirk was murdered and widowed his wife and 2 young kids when he was a decent man. And all they do is tell lies about him and stuff. So there's no reconciliation. There's no olive branch. Nick Freitas is right on the money. It's balkanization, or God forbid, civil war, but we will not patch this country back together again with these lunatics. It's just not going to happen. So I guess what I'm trying to say at the end of the day is I personally believe that we will come out on top, whether it be internal or external enemies. They've woken a sleeping giant. I think things have really changed since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And I only see that becoming more profound because there's a whole bunch of us for many years had a very libertarian attitude. I don't care what you do. As long as you're not hurting anybody else and impacting me, I don't give a shit. Well, we gave them the inch and they took the proverbial mile. And I think people now realize that that's not an effective strategy. And we're going to have to go to great lengths to save our country, because other countries, I personally think, are lost, whether it be, England, France, Canada. They've been destroyed by the World Economic Forum. They've been destroyed by a massive influx of people who are not compatible with Western culture. I defy anybody to send me one instance of 2 or more radically opposed cultures occupying the same geography and coexisting, peacefully coexisting. It's never happened. It never will happen. No. So, unfortunately, that's the state of America today. And hopefully, we are able to turn this thing around. So with that being said, let me just cue up the next thing here, because this is one of my
come on.
It's one of my favorite things. All right, 3, 2, 1.
Boom.
Yep. Man, I got something sticky on my fingers. My touchpad wasn't working. It screwed up my Carnival stuff. So it's time for the Carnival Hero of the Night, carnival.com. I'll speak a little bit more on that in just a second. But the actual story is this one over here. So Hero of the Day is actually a whole bunch of parents. It's called Hero Parenting. It's 2 minutes and 29 seconds long. I'm a little reluctant to play the whole thing, but no promises. I'll play enough, though, that you get some goodness out of it.
Oh, Chloe.
Fish on there.
Oh my God!
Right on.
Holy crap!
Oh.
Oh gosh, good catch.
Oh.
Gosh, Noah. Bring the glove out.
Hey! Gotcha. What the? Oh, that's epic. Oh, those.
Whoa.
Bring the glove out. Oh, oh,
She didn't even put her food down.
Yeah, neither one of them did.
Super. One-handed.
It's almost like they've done this before.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, let's see the warm-up ones, right, Stu?
Yeah.
You are watching a master at work.
Oh.
Wow. All right, so I lied. We had to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was fantastic. So next one up from Toxic Cowboy. What would you use? And I'm trying to remember who submitted. Oh, Bruno. This is from Bruno in our Signal chat. Submitted the reader story of the day. And again, the question is, what would you use? 1 minute, 17 seconds. Here's the thing. This is AI. So I'm not trying to say that this is real or anything like this, but it's still very entertaining to watch and maybe gives you some ideas.
Oh yeah, I've seen these.
Oh, my arm! Forget this.
Yeah, those are my favorite, the glitter bombs.
Oh,
yeah, man, that's what they need to be.
You can't touch this.
Oh, what the?
All right, quick and easy. Oh my God!
Oh yeah.
Perfect.
I don't care if that's AI or not. That's some funny stuff.
Yeah,
Right
that's funny.
there.
I want to see somebody make one with dog shit.
Oh God. I mean, we were simpletons back in the day, right? It was a paper
Yeah.
bag with dog shit in it set on fire at somebody's front door. Not that I ever did anything like that.
No,
Never.
I was
Never.
a saint back then.
Yeah.
All right. So it is time for the conflicted question of the night. Take it away, S2.
Okay, so everybody in the audience, before I read this off, you need to hit the thumbs up or the like button or whatever platform you're on that says you like what you've seen tonight. And here we go. Mason needed an inhaler in order to overcome a severe asthma attack. Gordon and other men drove out to find one. While scavenging for an inhaler at a store, he found someone who had the inhaler he needed, but the person wouldn't give it up. If you were Gordon, how far would you go to secure something you needed after being told no by its owner?
Randy, I'm going to let you take the first swing at this one.
Well, I love this thing because then it says, we went to and there was a store open. Yeah, I don't, we'll see if that's the case or not. And then I suppose.
Well, I don't think the store was open. They went to a store.
Maybe you're right.
It happened
Maybe
to have
you're
some
right.
stock.
Yeah.
I think that's the context.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts, right? It's really going to depend on who that owner is, to me, because in the apocalyptic times, and we're trying to survive here, and this is actual survival, not quite what we're in today. This is actual survival. If I think that they're a bad person, or you know what I mean, or they're evil in some way, then I'm liable to take it from them to secure it for my team, the people I'm looking after. I'm going to put them first every single time. And, that's probably how I would go about it. Now, again, if this was a nice person, a God-fearing person, I'm not going to steal from them because obviously they probably need the inhaler too, or they would not have one.
So,
but to me, again, it comes down to if they're a bad person, I'm liable to take it from them.
Yeah. So Chris is in our Signal chat as well. And he says, BFE Khalid, probably. Thank you for the $20 tip, by the way. So for those of you who don't know what that does not stand for bum, you know what, Egypt, that stands for Khalid's favorite resolution to all problems, battlefield execution.
That's right.
So
be field expedient, right? That's just be field expedient.
Yeah. And thanks again, Chris. S2 always bats clean up here when he puts these out there. I think in this scenario where you're in a post-apocalyptic world and society's completely broken down and it's your team or the other team, unfortunately, my team is going to win at the end of the day. So we're going to do whatever we have to. Oh, shit, we just got kicked off of a platform. I just got a notification up there.
It's because we said we would take their
had to be Facebook.
Alrighty then. So S2, I'll give you the comm.
So to me, this would require a level of negotiation. First off, I would want to question the person and say, why won't you give us this inhaler? Do you need it? And if he says, yeah, I need it, I would say, okay, so is there anything that you need that we might have that maybe, because we've got a person that's in the middle of an asthma attack right now, maybe you could come back to where we are and give them a hit off of your inhaler. And if that doesn't work, then I would be liable to say, well, why not? And we would have to go back and forth with this. I don't see that. I know asthma can be, I don't want to say treated. Asthma can be mitigated. Asthma attacks can be mitigated through other means rather than these inhalers.
Okay.
So knowing that this is not a life or death situation in this case, and I would rather have my conscience clean knowing that this person maybe is in the same scenario that I'm in, that he's getting this for somebody else, even if he doesn't need it for himself. So if we can come to some kind of conflict resolution with this without having to put somebody in the dirt, I think that would be the better way to go.
Well, I just said, hey, that's why I determined if they're good or bad, right? Because that is what it would come down to. I didn't say I'd kill them, although I didn't say I wouldn't either.
Didn't say you wouldn't have a choice.
That's right. You might be right about that.
Sounds like
I'd be right about that. But I'm not going to take the chance of bringing them back to my place either way. I'm not going to do that.
Sounds like Khalid is wearing off on you, Randy. You'd be very flattered to hear that. One last quick reminder here. If you head over to survivaldispatch.news, we're running a membership promo. It's the first time, the only time we've ever done this on Substack, survivaldispatch.news. Click on this right here where it says Join the Guardians. And that will go into great detail as far as all the benefits are that you get. You can click join the network, come down here, stand with the mission, whatever the choice may be. But essentially, we're giving 30% off right now on memberships because here's the deal. The more people who sign up, and paid members do have, there's two different lists on Substack. Paid members do have a big impact on one of the two top 100 lists, but it spreads our audience to a bigger group. So with 30% off at $52.49 a year, it's less than $5 a month. And what that helps us do is to grow the audience because it keeps us high in Substack. More people see us, more people sign up. It's this self-licking ice cream cone. And we've maybe got an extra few months here before 9/11 2.0, thanks to the damage that Pakistan did on the command and control stuff in Afghanistan. But at the end of the day, again, for $5.59 a month right now, because it's 30% off, or $52.49 a year, which gets you 2.5 months for free, actually, you get all kinds of benefits. You get the Guardian eyes, meaning all of the Guardians across the country have eyes on everything that short circuits, legacy media bullshit. You get access to 4 Signal channels. And I won't go into great detail explaining them now, but they all have different purposes and a lot of value. You get to interact with the entire SDN team behind the scenes. You get survival dispatch emergency notifications. They go to your email. They go to Substack. They go to the Signal channel. They go to the POC link radios. If you get these, and there's a link where you can buy them. Again, tonight's the last night that you can get free global coverage for these guys, included in the price of $399 a pair, which is also going to be going up imminently. But tonight, last night, free global access, life of the radios. After that, depending on the package you choose, $29 to $65 a year per radio. Again, you get behind the scenes content. You get all kinds of e-magazines that we sell for $10 a piece. You get about 400 bucks of them for free. You get our full sit reps 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. You get all of our sources for those sit reps. You get early access to content. We put stuff out early, like JJ Morris's stuff. If you have not seen JJ's video from this morning, it is epic. It's mixed in with footage from the original Predator 1987. Phenomenal job on JJ's part. It's a really, really good video. It went up on YouTube later in the day, but we always go to Substack first. Trying to remember what else I've got to do here. Oh, I obviously want to thank all the Guardians who've already signed up, but definitely want to thank our friends at Carnival. You can see Randy's wearing a Carnival hat. Go to carnival.com, use code EATMEAT at checkout, all one word. You get 10% off if your order's over $99. You get free shipping as well. This is incredible stuff, all American. The bag's American. Everything in the bag is American, including the O2 absorber. This is super high quality American beef with no mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines, no unknown sources that it's coming from, no glued together fake meats, reconstitutes in less than 10 minutes, and you have raw steak. Whereas everybody else, what they do is they cook it, they freeze dry it, they put it in a bag, you heat it back up again, and it's like shoe leather, which is why they cut it into such small pieces. But beef, chicken, pork, all American. We do not get affiliate commissions from these guys, but when you use the code EATMEAT, they know that you came from Survival Dispatch, and they help us with deferring some of our expenses each month that would just keep going up and up and up. $4,700 a month now in software subscriptions. I have an addiction to certain pieces of software like AIs. If I try one and it does something nobody else does, I have to sign up for it. It's just the way it is. I think that's it. Other than, man, we'll be back tomorrow night at the usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Khalid will be back with us tomorrow night. Really interesting topic in our long war series, which is bartering and parallel economies. So basically alternates to, financial systems that collapse or will collapse, and building these barter networks. And what can you stock up on now that'll bode well for the future? But besides that, that's it between tonight and tomorrow night. If you could be so kind as to go to survivaldispatch.news, sign up as a Guardian. And let me see, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America.
God bless America. Thank you guys for all the support and love tonight.
And enjoy the closing video.
Republicans do not have the votes in the Senate to invoke cloture on the House CR.
Everything you do is stupid. Everything you do is for show. Your hypocrisy can't fool me. Your corruption's been exposed.
And Schumer is a Palestinian as far as I'm concerned.
The last thing Americans need right now is a pointless government shutdown.
This is the Schumer shutdown. We're working on his budget. It was his responsibility to get this budget done.
You were stolen from us slowly as our anger with you grows. This American revolution no longer the status quo. Also looking at you, noodle hair bros. So virtuous, so principled, worthless, all talk. We see right through you. Your corruption game is over. You're decrepit and you're old. You are subject to your masters. We